So, hey everyone, welcome back to Pride Life Presents. I am so excited that we're able to bring you another show. And I'm even more excited about today's guest. As always, we have fabulous guests. But today's guest is a multi-award-winning female actor who is widely known for her work in a very popular soap. I'll do that because I'm so excited to announce it. Playing the well-loved character Sally St. Clair. In this assuming role, she became the first ever transgender person cast to play a regular transgender character in a leading UK soap, and is the most prolific trans actress in UK television history. So it is with absolute pleasure that I am about to introduce the trailblazer and the legend, I will throw in, that is Annie Wallace. Annie, welcome.
Hello.
How are you doing today, Annie? Are you good?
I'm good. I've been in front of this computer all day because I'm on the Equity General Committee, and we've had one of our monthly meetings today, which lasts 4 hours. So I'm a bit, so I've just coming to terms with that. But apart from that, it's a day off, so I can't complain.
Yeah, well, I hope you save. Just give us a little bit of your energy, because I know you're bursting with it usually. So please.
I'm fine. I'm fine.
So listen, thank you again for your time, because I do know how busy you are. We are always really, really appreciative of the time that people give up, especially our fabulous celebrities like yourself. Today, I just really want to have.
I'll laugh at that. I'm sorry, I have to laugh at that.
Don't laugh. It's true. But also, the thing is, I want to chat to you today about, obviously, your career, your journey. We're going to talk about, how you became the fabulous Sally St. Clair, the character, your journey to that. Also thinking a bit more about, being a trans person, your coming out journey, etc. So there's a few things we're going to be throwing out there. Nothing that I'm sure you wouldn't be happy to chat about me with today. But I guess firstly, just for people watching as well, or listening to the podcast, tell us a bit more about Sally St. Clair's character and how you kind of, got the role in the first place, because it was a bit of a stop-start journey in terms of your acting career, if that's right.
Oh, just a bit. It stopped and started twice over the space of about 15 years. So there you go. I in a nutshell, at school, I went and did all the training and the certificates. And then when it came to actually going to drama school at 18 years old, I discovered that you needed a lot of money back in the day, back in 1982. You kind of had to be a bit rich because you couldn't just use a student loan like you do this, now. That's the standard thing. So mum and dad, quite poor, weren't able to afford to do it. So I had to just go, well, that was a dream. But I went into the other stuff that I do, which is computers, which was just really emerging into the mainstream. So I discovered an aptitude with computers, so I started to work with them, and that was a marketable skill, so that was what I did for a long time. Fast forward some considerable time to late 90s, found myself doing some stuff for Coronation Street, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. And I got the bug again for acting. So I just thought, you know what, I'm 35, 36 years old. I am going to go to drama school. I'm going to finance it. I'm going to do it. So I did. And I applied to the Manchester School of Theatre, was lucky enough to get in on my second try. So it wasn't exactly the path wasn't paved with gold. I had to work for it. But I did my 3 years and I got my degree. And then the work wasn't there. So I went back into computers for a number of years. And then after the crash of 2008, I lost my job. So basically I thought I need to do it now because I'm running out of time. I mean, good heavens, I was just turning 45 and I was going, this is ridiculous. What's going on? I am running out of time. So I got myself an agent, pushed myself forward. I did one episode of Shameless.
Yes.
Which was very rude.
As it always should be.
Well, it's shameless. It's kind of par for the course.
Yes.
And then what happened was they started to do some TV programs which had trans characters in them for the first time, pretty much. Previous trans characters had been played by non-trans actors, because there was this belief that there was no such thing as a transgender actor out there, and if there was, they didn't want them. And this was changing about 2013 with Cucumber and Banana by Russell T Davies, and then there was later the Boy Meets Girl on the BBC, which I auditioned for, but I wasn't suitable for it. Rebecca was much better. And then Hollyoaks put out this thing of we want to look at what's available out there in terms of trans talent and see what we can do with it, because they'd had a couple of trans characters before, but neither had been trans actors. So they kind of wanted to redress the balance, I think, and go, we've got quite a few gay and lesbian and bisexual characters. Let's complete the alphabet.
Yeah.
So myself and about 30 other people were whittled down to about 6, and then we were recalled and put through the paces with script work and stuff like that. One of my fellow recall people was Ash, who has gone on to Emmerdale. So the two of us auditioned together at that time, and so that's where our friendship kind of started, because he's a good guy. So basically, then they said, okay, so now, thank you for coming. It'll be about a year. And I went,
what?
And it was because they said, we want to write a character based upon someone or a combination of people from this acting pool that we have. And then that takes time. We have to develop a character. We have to write it and everything. And so I wasn't a happy bunny, but I went, you know what? It was a good experience. And then a year later, right enough, up comes the auditions, and I got it.
Yay!
and that was 7 years ago. It's still there.
Wow, 7 years.
It was quite a path.
Yeah, well, 7 years and still going strong. Still very popular character, which is really important as well.
Yeah.
And also, I think important as a trans person, as a trans character, being part of the LGBTQ plus community. We do know, media and visibility. Often people have been killed off by now, or, they've met with an untimely something's happened. So 7 years in, I think that says a lot. It's a very positive, progression, isn't it?
Well, I think it's something I said at the beginning. I said, this is not going to be and the phrase, and I will use the phrase in inverted commas, kill your gays. It sounds horrible, doesn't it? But that's what it's termed as. Because quite often in mainstream drama, someone LGBT is brought in to be a tragic character who then mysteriously dies or has terrible things happen and they go off into the sunset. Very rarely for an LGBT character is there a happy ending. And that still happens today, unfortunately. It's still, and it's normally from cisgendered straight actors who don't have any experience and just think that, I don't know why they think we're all miserable. Trust me, I'm not. So I said, this isn't what's going to happen. No, absolutely not. So it was like, okay. And it was also, they wanted to get my input into it. Previously, a trans teacher called Juno Roche, who's currently now a best-selling author, had given them a lot of background and stuff about that. And then they said, we'd like your input as well. And so I didn't want to interfere too much. I didn't want to say, oh, yes, I've got this great idea for storyline, blah, 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 blah. But dialogue, I wanted the dialogue to be accurate, and they've been very good in accommodating that, as and when it has been necessary. So given that, they wanted to invest in Sally as a character, give her a backstory, give her a family as well. So I came in, obviously it was a big secret, but 6 months after joining, it was revealed that I had this family with this son, John Paul McQueen. Yes. And then eventually they linked Sally up with Myra, her ex-squeeze. So that was a lot of fun to do. So there's that, that was a good way of doing it. And I think similarly with Ash and Emmerdale, he was brought in to play Matty, who had previously been one of the Barton daughters in that family who had gone away and then come back. And there was a big conflict about, why have you done this behind my back? And it was like, I had to do it away from you. I couldn't do it here in this tiny village. And you have to think, that's probably a good move. There's not... being trans in a village is probably one of the hardest things I can possibly imagine. I'm lucky I've lived in large towns and cities, so I've not had massive issues. But you can just imagine what that would have been like. And certainly Matty has had, his issues as well. So for Sally's point of view, yeah, it was nice to come in with a family to kind of back her up and make her a three-dimensional character, not just a token T.
Yeah. But it's true what you say about, boy, that was almost comedy value there, wasn't it? Boing.
Sorry.
For those of you who may be listening, that was the microphone went boing up. Anyway, but it is true. Just going back to like what you're saying about, I think how reflective, I guess, the reality of actually, when you talk about Matty or even, your own character as being a parent, as a family, it's important that it's not just about visibility, like you say, as being we obviously don't want to be token anything, but important that people do see that we are, can have families, or the reality of someone maybe having to go away and leave their family home because they at that point maybe weren't supported or understood, and then coming back as their true authentic self is a very common thing also, isn't it?
It is. And, Sally's parents have been mentioned a couple of times, but, by all accounts, there wasn't a good relationship there, as happens with a lot of trans people. Some trans people they're very fortunate. They've got understanding parents who support them. And I think these days, especially, I think some younger trans people, they are having the support and the love that actually is absolutely essential for that journey. Me personally, I left my hometown without telling my mum and dad, and then it was a big surprise to them. But I knew that I couldn't have done it where I lived. It wouldn't have been possible to do. And that's a common issue with a lot of trans people. I think for Sally, I think it was brave of her to come back to Hollyoaks after living away for 25 years, doing her own thing, building up a teaching career. But the representation you're talking about is the key in this respect. For a young programme like Hollyoaks, to take on a 50-year-old trans woman is quite brave. I mean, she's obviously a head teacher, so, the age is appropriate there. But on the other hand, it's like, how is a young trans person possibly going to identify with someone middle-aged who's an authority figure? And I'll be honest with you, I've had a lot of people who've said exact opposite. They've gone, you're such an inspiration.
Yes.
And this, just being on television was enough to show, actually, I've had a life. I'm not just transitioned 5 minutes ago. I actually transitioned in the late 80s. And therefore, it's like I've gone through these decades and I've had a successful life. And that's a future to give to younger trans people. It's not something to be frightened of. It's not something that you should go, oh, but how on earth am I going to live my life? You are going to live your life. You have to take control of your own life. Having more trans people in television, I thought, would by now have been the norm. Sadly, the national problem of transphobia reared its head just after I joined, and that's why you don't see any more trans people on television. It's kind of, this is a bit controversial again. We better not do that. And really, there's me and Ash and Rebecca, and not many others.
Yeah,
there's a few people, but it's really not a good situation.
I totally hear what you're saying. I mean, I think that's the the unfortunate reality of maybe where we are at in terms of media and that positive representation. But I guess considering where we are at, we have people like yourself who are, like you say, able to be that openly out, that visible role model. And, I know also, just to touch on quickly, because you are also a patron with where it just ties in, with Mermaids. So, which obviously is a charity, that also supports young people and families who are needing, otherwise it can be very isolating, can't it? Needing that support around the whole process, whether it's for the individual or for families. So, if you think back yourself, when you were growing up, who was your representative? Who was the visibility there? What did that even look like? I'm quite sure I can guess your answer.
Well, there was only one person that was visible at the time, and that was Julia Grant from Blackpool. And she had a number of clubs and things up in the northwest, and then she opened a couple in Manchester. Coincidentally, around about the time when I moved to Manchester, because I lived in Scotland up until 99, and then because of the Coronation Street stuff, I moved down because I fell in love with Manchester. It's an amazing city, and for someone who's interested in the arts, it's just constantly happening, whether it's main stage productions or fringe productions. And all the artists, all the music artists come to Manchester. It's literally, it opened my mind quite substantially. And moving down was one of the best things that I could do. So by funny coincidence, through a friend of a friend, I met Julia, whose television programmes in the late 70s I had watched on a tiny little 14-inch black and white television set in my bedroom with the volume turned down so that my mum and dad didn't hear that I was watching this programme. It was like a secret thing I had to watch. And I was just amazed that there was someone out there who I identified with. And then, of course, we met and we become really good friends.
Oh, wow.
And I worked with her on quite a few events in Manchester for the LGBT community. There was a couple of prides we did. We did Benidorm Pride together.
Oh, fabulous.
And various other things. She sadly died a few years ago, but she was a good friend. And at the time, yes, she was the only person on television that had opened her life up in a documentary format to do it this way. In terms of fiction, most trans people, and I'm talking transsexual people, weren't seen on television. And trans people, it was mostly cross-dressing men, because the public, for some reason, thought that was far funnier and far more entertaining. So that's what would happen on television. So in terms of that representation, it didn't exist. And this was also at a time just around the HIV and AIDS crisis that cropped up in the 80s and came to a head with that horrendous advert, Don't Die of Ignorance, it was.
I think, and horrible advert, wasn't it?
Horrible. And it demonised the LGBT community for years. It took a long time for people to recover from that. So I was going through my start of my transition at that time. And all I could do was put my head down and hope to keep a low profile. And at the time, I was able to blend in, and that's how I did it. Because I thought if I'd been out, I would have been beaten up. That was the way it was. It's still not an easy thing to do by any stretch of the imagination.
Absolutely.
But in the late 80s, it was phenomenally difficult.
Oh gosh, I mean, I remember the advert. I think I am an 80s baby, and I do remember that advert coming out. I was probably about 8 actually around that time, and I remember being scared of it and not even realising why. But so you can imagine how the impact it's had. I didn't realise I was a little baby lesbian at that point. But but at the same time, it just shows the impact of the scaremongering and the fear. So how, and unfortunately, again, coming back to the media and how that they can negatively impact public opinion, was particularly when it's not based on fact, is quite scary sometimes. We see how it's affecting the trans community in particular right now.
Well, it's based upon fear mongering, and it's manipulated by the people who oppose. So, for example, although the HIV crisis that happened in the late 80s was largely unfortunately, there was a lot of gay men that were having the problems. The amount of people and friends and lovers that were lost was just catastrophic. It was used as a lever to say, well, the whole community is poisonous and can pass on diseases and everything. And of course, this is complete lies. And, generally speaking, if there's something that people can use as a bludgeon, they will use it, whether it relies on facts or not. Currently, the transphobia campaign that's being led by the mainstream media, certain so-called celebrities on social media and things like that, a lot of it is based on untruths. It's taking a bit of a rumour and saying, oh, well, this is what's happened. The current favourite one, of course, is, trancing away the gay.
Oh my gosh!
And that's a phrase. That's a phrase that was used in a court of law a few years ago. No, sorry, a few weeks ago. They think that this is what happens, that if parents have a child who comes out as gay or expresses that they may be gay, and that supposedly parents who are homophobic think it's easier to turn their child into the opposite sex so that they're not gay. Have you ever heard anything more demented in your life? The notion that a parent would change the sex of their child because they were homophobic. It doesn't happen. I'm quite sure somewhere in America or some other, slightly odd country. Sorry, America, you're not an odd country, but bits of you are. That might happen. But this doesn't happen on a regular basis, remotely. But it's being used as a bludgeon. I love the word bludgeon. It's being used as a bludgeon to kind of hammer the trans community. Yeah. Oh, you're homophobic. You're trying to eliminate gays. You're trying to erase lesbians. It's like, it's got nothing to do with sexuality. Being trans is about gender. Gender and sexuality are separate things. And to try and conflate them is one of the ways that they scare the public. And when you've scared the public, logic doesn't go in. It's all about the scare factor. Yeah. So it's the same tactics as the 80s being repeated now. And don't forget, this was not an issue until 6 years ago. So, if it was a major national, problem, we would have heard about this decades ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not a problem. It's simply a transphobic campaign. And I have to spend most of my time telling people, no, that's not. Even one of my friends the other day said, oh, well, I heard this. And I went, yeah, where did you hear it from? It's like, no, that's not true. Would you like to know? Would you like to tell me the truth? Or,
yeah.
It's so frustrating.
It is frustrating, even for me, as a part of the community, but as an ally, trans ally as well, and also, as an inclusion trainer, I find, and, when you say friends, family, when the people close to you as well, sometimes everyone's entitled to their opinion, look. But I always say, look, if you make your opinion, at least base it on facts and real information. And then if you still feel like that way, well, what can we do? But at least that you're closer, you're more likely to move closer to understanding the truth and the reality of it, which may then eventually lead you to become an ally and just to, and I think it is straining, like you say. So, I can really kind of hear you there. And I know a lot of other of my trans friends, people within the community say, sometimes you just need that time out, don't you? Of course, just to re-energize and
and correcting the lies has become a bit of an onerous task, because when people have the tabloids and even the BBC going along with what are essentially lies created by the people who want to eliminate us, and they do, because they've been recorded saying, I think we have to try and get the number of trans people down. That means elimination.
Yes.
There's nothing polite about saying something like that. And that's the problem we have. It's like, well, I read this and that's obviously a decent thing. I heard it on the BBC. Yes, you heard it on the BBC. And was it the same person who a few months ago reported another scare? So, it's the same person, right? Does that not make you think? Yeah. You get Channel 4 are currently riding high by trying to be truthful about things, and even they've kind of had problems because they're surrounded by a campaign of disinformation. And when the campaign of disinformation is in a chain, so it starts small and then it gets passed along and it grows like Chinese whispers, and then the original person who started the thing, who probably anti-trans, is just smiling and going, oh, look what I created. The classic example is a lady called Maya Forstarter, who is quite a figure within the anti-trans movement. And she's currently very, very vocal. I believe she's a solicitor, a lawyer, and she worked for she was employed by a chambers, lawyers' chambers, and she was very vocal and, in fact, quite what's the word I'm looking for? Evangelical. There you go. quite evangelical about trying to tell other women what a danger trans people were. And people in her office found this really difficult and a little bit odd. And her bosses basically weren't happy with that, and they let her go. But she basically fought back against that for unfair dismissal and all. And then it kind of escalated into having her opinions derided. So then she took them to court for that. So basically, she ended up winning £22,000 from her employers because the employers had tweeted that they were investigating her. So that's fair enough. That's fair enough because that's a breach of confidence. So, okay. But she lost the other part, which was basically against Stonewall by saying Stonewall have a pernicious, unwanted influence upon employers, and they are peddling trans ideology and they have to be stopped. She lost that part of the case quite spectacularly. The next day, all the press was Maya wins case. Maya has successfully won.
So they've
because she
that,
won.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, this is what happens. It's not about the truth. So she won a payout because her employer had breached confidence. But she lost the major part of the case, which was against Stonewall, who are trans inclusive. And that was the key point. But when the press are, and, you know, the BBC website and everything, they're all saying the same thing, that she won the case. And we're just sat there going,
did we not think about what got her there in the first place? I completely overlooked it.
She is completely entitled to her opinion. This is the really important thing. People are entitled to the most offensive, unpopular, niche opinions because we're human beings and it's our right. But nobody has the right to then take those opinions and try and force them upon someone else. They can say, this is my opinion, this is my opinion. What they can't do is then demand that their opinions suddenly have to be respected in law, because they're not. And the law is the only thing that's currently keeping trans people afloat. Because of the Gender Recognition Act and the Equality Act of 2010, we are protected currently, and thank God.
I mean, well, this is it, isn't it? Exactly that. Thank God that we do have that legislation in place, and let's just think, well, hope that it stays that way. But this is a wave that our community often has to ride. I know it's really additionally tough on the trans community. It is something that, though, I think we always. We are very tenacious and we are resilient, even though it's hard, but we can push forward. And I do try and want to believe that there are, for the vast minority, and I'm going to say minority, I do believe there's a majority of the good people that are supportive and inclusive. Unfortunately, there are that group of voices that seem to be shouting louder, which makes them feel and look bigger.
It's a small, noisy minority.
Doesn't make it any better, though.
Really no, it doesn't. It doesn't.
And I think, as being that kind of high profile out trans woman that you are, let's talk about how, because you've then had this spectacular opportunity, before you became, even working on Hollyoaks, the opportunity to help, with Hayley Cropper's character, because you was one of the consultants on there for, with Coronation Street. Talk us a bit more about that and what that's kind of meant to you to be able to have that input. Because even at that time, trans and, that wouldn't have really spoken about topic, would it?
No, 1998, it was still very much trans people were underground. So was I. I wasn't out. I was in the closet, as it were. And at the time I was working for PC World. I was going around fixing computers for PC World in a little white car. So that was my job at the time, and kept my head down. Everything was all right. And this came along, and to begin with, I didn't think it would be a good thing because I thought, being a soap opera, they were going to just mine it for laughs and everything. And to be honest, in subsequent interviews with the producer at the time, Brian Park, he's admitted that part of it was that. It was like, Roy Cropper is a bit of a figure of fun because he's a bit odd. Let him have a girlfriend, and turns out she's trans.
Yeah.
But what happened was that at some point in the writing process, they decided, actually, we can make this a proper love story. And so the most important part of that story was the relationship between these two people. It wasn't a tub-thumping political thing that they wanted to do. It was what Coronation Street did best. Two people meet, fall in love. They just had a slight problem they had to get over in the middle bit, where it was like Hayley told Roy what happened, and he went, "Whoa!" So the first bit, the first 3 months happened completely without me, but I was a big fan because I really identified with Hayley, and she reminded me of myself back in the day when I kind of was a bit head down and a bit kind of like getting on with my work.
Not as confident.
No, not remotely. So I was really, really taken by that portrayal. And then through a friend of a friend, through Prince for Change, Christine Burns put me in touch with Coronation Street. And they said they wanted someone who could give them a life model. Someone they can talk to about being trans, about how the world reacted to them when they came out, any problems during employment, travel, the basics that you can't read in a book. It has to be related by pure experience.
Yeah, lived experience, absolutely.
Yeah. And shortly after I started that in spring of '98, I met up with Julie Hesmondhalgh, the actress who played Hayley. We hit it off like a house on fire, became really good mates. We still are, see her regularly. And we suddenly realised we had a fabulous opportunity in our hands to tell a great story and also put in some really important things, such as at the time, two people really in love with each other. He proposes to her. She has to tell him, we can't get married.
Yeah.
The law doesn't allow it. And, bursts into tears and cries. It was in the papers the next day. Oh my God, why can't they? That's how you get to people, by showing real life situations instead of hypothetical. Oh, well, that's actually just two men. They shouldn't be allowed to marry. No, it's a man and a woman who want to marry.
Yeah.
Let them, but they couldn't. And the beauty about that was it was a fantastic experience in terms of it exposed me to television, to soap, and how I fell in love with that. But also, we got to do some really important stories about the things that kept cropping up in Hayley's life, which kept reminding her of her background. She couldn't just switch off. And eventually, once the kind of first wedding stroke blessing happened, even the government started to take notice. And Press for Change had been lobbying for a long time for trans rights to become set in law. And the final thing was all the letters that people were writing because of Coronation Street. And they agreed. They says, we're going to set up a working group into seeing if we can grant legal rights to trans people for the first time.
Amazing.
And to think that Hayley and Julie and the writers and the producers and a little tiny bit of me had anything going into that is just, it's one of my proudest achievements of being a small part of a very big story. Yeah.
Oh, listen, and I don't think you were a small part in that. I think you're being a bit modest there, to be honest. But I do think it's, I want to ask you on that about, because you've talked a lot very openly about, your own coming out journey. And actually, even when you, correct me if I'm wrong, from what I know through research, you've mentioned that a few times that you was never really about the big whole shebang of coming out of the closet in terms of, being loud and proud about it. So whilst you're there writing, for a character in Coronation Street about their life as a trans person and how they should be true to themselves, did you kind of have your own battle or struggle with that in yourself? Or, because...
I had no struggle with it. I simply didn't want to come out. Yeah. And everything I did for Corrie was done very secretively. Only a few people at the studios knew, the few people, the writers, the producer, some of the actors, who were all lovely to me. They were all lovely. And it was, I wanted it to be secret. And that was good for Corrie as well, because they didn't want to do this. I think nowadays, when there's a consultant brought in about a particular social story they want to do. They're quite keen to promote the people they talk to, like when they've consulted with Survivors Manchester or pancreatic cancer charities and things. They're quite keen to say, we have worked with these people. And that's good for the charities as well. Back then, I couldn't have possibly done that, because what it would have happened is it would have affected my job, my house. When you don't have legal rights, they could literally have thrown me out of my job and my house without even a blink of an eye. It would have been a case of, well, of course we can do that. Look at you.
Yeah.
That's how it would have been. So you had to keep your head down. It just became a habit. And yes, I wasn't the most feminine person in the world, but you know what? Nobody really blinked. I blended in. My voice didn't really break properly, so my voice blended in quite well. So that was good for me, that I was able to try and have a relatively normal life. The only time that I really started to think about coming out was when I was noticing trans actors on television. And I was going, you know what? I really want a bit of that, because I think I can do it justice. But to do it, I'm going to have to come out. And not just to the family, and not just to my friends. I'm going to have to be out to everyone and everywhere. And
You're out of the IKEA closet now, love. That's it.
Absolutely, yes, with the broken hinges. But the problem was that I didn't know if I was ready to do it. And I sat down with my mate Julie Hesman-Halshen, and we talked it through. And I says, look, I think this could be a huge opportunity. I could find myself being a big fish in a small pond, and it might launch the acting career. It might get me going, where I've been really quiet before then. And she was like, are you sure? Are you sure you want to do this? And I was like, I think so. And she was very nervous for me, because obviously we had known each other for like 10 years previously, more than 10 years, 15 years. And she just didn't want to see me hurt.
Of course. It's like protection,
And I was quite a nervous person up to a certain point in my life. And she just didn't want to see me get into trouble. I said, look, I have to take the chance with this. And I said, if I don't get the part, we don't have to confront it. But I got the part. I didn't come out for the Shameless one. Yeah. Because the Shameless one, she wasn't a trans character.
Oh, yes, that's true, yeah.
She was just a head teacher. So that wasn't an issue. But this particular one, trans character, had to come out. Do you know what? And I say this to everyone now when I'm interviewed about it. I had just turned 50 in May, and I got the part in July, and it couldn't have come at a better time. 50 is a really interesting age to reach. Some people reach it earlier, but I got to the point of, I really don't give a damn what people think about me anymore.
Yes, great.
I'm comfortable in my skin and my friends and my family. Everything's good. What could you possibly do to me now? And also, full legal rights, so couldn't be sacked for it.
That's true.
So I just thought, look, say what you like. I don't care. And I've had to develop a bit of a thicker skin than I had, but, oh, trust me, everything's water off a duck's back now. There's nothing they can do to me anymore. And it's good because it's quite liberating. And I was able to go, okay, because it is quite corrosive. I think anyone harboured... it's just, you're constantly having to look behind you and think, oh, God, is someone going to make this public? Or... That once that was taken away and I was able to just be out, I went, right, I'm going to make this work. I'm going to be out. I'm going to be a visible trans person on television, which just wasn't happening. And that will be my role in life. And that's been really enjoyable. Really enjoyable.
Well, listen, this is exactly what I mean, though. It's like it is people like yourself who are, putting yourself out there, because I think you can be a very confident. I always talk about this in my training and just in general. If I'm talking, doing talks or whatever, you can be a very confident person about your sexual orientation, gender identity. You can be out there, but the reality of the situation is that we'll still have times where we have to be, do that almost that risk assessment. Is it okay? Is it safe in this environment? Is it okay? And it shouldn't be like that. But the more you do it, it doesn't take that away necessarily, but you give yourself, you take back the power. And the more visible we are, as again, I think it goes back to hopefully getting more support through allyship, and, people are seeing that. And, the difference.
So important. Allies are so important.
Absolutely.
And, you know, to take this away from transes, I'm a member of the LGBT plus community. And that is a very diverse community of sexuality and gender, or non-gender, depending if you're non-binary. And basically, it is diverse, but the one thing we all have in common is that we have the same enemies. And I feel that sticking together and supporting each other is by far the most sensible method. This business about the LGBT Alliance going, oh yes, we're not interested in trans people, they're dangerous and they're stupid and they're weird, we're just going to think about LGBT people. Why would you do that? Literally, why would you do it? You're literally cutting off an entire section of potential allies just because you find trans people icky.
Yes.
And that's what it all comes down to. It comes back to, that's what it is. That feeling of,
ignorance,
and
fear,
that
lack of
ignorance and
education.
stupidity.
Exactly.
Our community is still not safe.
Absolutely.
All we have to do is look at what's been happening in America recently. We have to look at what's been happening all across the world. It's a constant thing. We're quite lucky in Britain because we have lots of legal protection. We have lots of social protection. We have hate crime laws. We have specific community support officers who are out trying to make sure that we're safe. We are lucky people. In Brazil, if you're trans, you have a 50-50 chance. It's literally that bad. And the problem that we have here is that the far right have been building up their strength over the past 10, 12 years under a certain government because they haven't been knocked down in the way that they should have been. And so they have grown up in this method of anything that's different, I'm going to fight it.
Well, that's why, again, coming back to that visibility and, you know, the impact that you have, you know, because also I know, you know, like you are a patron for mermaids, as we talked about earlier, but your visibility, I mean, you must get lots of fan mail from people to say that, you know, this, thank you, I'm quite sure, you know, of the impact that you've had, because still, like you say, even now, there's not enough trans visibility, is there?
No. My patronships they're very hands off. So, you know, you're talking about mermaids, also Sparkle, and Salford Pride. I was a patron of Manchester Pride, but we kind of had very different opinions on things, and I thought it was better to part. And my principles mean more. So, but I'm hands off. I support organisations that I believe are doing the right thing. Mermaids has come under the most horrendous attacks recently because children are involved. And it's a very emotive subject. There's a lot of people who feel that mermaids are endangering children. And I know Susie, the CEO of Mermaids, and I've been aware of Mermaids. They've been around for like 25 years. They're a very long-standing, well-thought-of charity who have a massive glass cabinet in their foyer of awards because they just kept winning awards and awards from health professionals and everything for all the good work they've done. And they've been absolutely demonized over the last 5 years. They have to spend more time and money defending themselves against smears than actually doing the job. But they still do the job because it's important. And it's all about counselling and talking to children and their families who find themselves completely at odds, not knowing what to do, when a child basically says that they are trans. And the parents usually don't know where to turn. Mermaids do a really good job. They don't prescribe hormones. They don't push people into surgery. They don't do any of these horrible things that people accuse them of. They are basically a very benign organisation that are simply helping families to be happier by being trans affirmative. So in other words, they're saying, listen to the child.
Absolutely,
There's a thing called Gillick competence, which was established in the 80s about this woman called Mrs. Gillick who didn't want young women to be able to get the pill without their parents' knowledge. But that basically took away body autonomy from a young person. So there was a court case that said, under the age of 16, if they are aware of the situation and they're aware of their own bodies, then they have competence. Now, that doesn't just apply to young women getting the pill. That applies to young trans people as well. they have the right to be heard. At the end of the day, my job is as an actor. I go to work at Hollyoaks studio. I read my lines. I pull funny faces. I trip over, and I give fake kids fake detention in the fake school. And I love it because it's the career that I always wanted. I always wanted to be an actor, and I never thought it would be possible. So I don't just get to be an actor. I get to have a little bit of that Hayley Cropper magic sprinkled, that I get to kind of talk about things which aren't being spoken about anywhere else.
People, absolutely.
And young people are listening. And yes, I do get fan mail for Sally. A lot of it is nothing to do with trans. A lot of it is just, we love Sally and John Paul and all that kind of thing, which is great. And some of it is, and I'm happy to pass them on to whoever. And I'm not a counsellor. I'm not an advisor. I have no feet in that whatsoever. So when people actually say to me, it's quite difficult, because sometimes they write and they say, well, I'm having this problem with my family and I feel like this and I don't know what to do. Can you help? And I literally have to be really honest and go, I'm really sorry to hear about this, but I'm not the person to ask. I'm an actress on a television programme. I'm an educated person, so I know my history and I know the problems that trans people have faced back at decades. But here's people to talk to. It's not always mermaids. It's sometimes a local organisation.
But you can signpost people at least as well, can't you? Or refer.
I can try.
Yeah, and that's...
I can try. And sometimes it's legal stuff. And I go, well, I speak to Press for Change because they're really good about that. Or I know some other people that kind of have had experience within the trans community and know their way around these problems. But I never take anything on myself, because I have one job.
You had one
and
job.
I love my job. And I'm not getting involved with anything particularly controversial. But my support of mermaids and Sparkle, very important to me, because these are organisations that are trying to help trans people. And then where's the harm in that?
Absolutely. And, values and morals and respect as well, and that's also important, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm a very moral person, and I simply believe that trans people deserve to be treated as everyone else, and that for some reason is just controversial now.
Yeah. Well, let's go with saying it's to the small, to a small number, big mouths it is, but to the reality
it is. And we've got enough to deal with anyway with the politics and the finances of this world, which are actually it's far more of concern.
Yes, exactly. But I think Annie, also that's going to be another podcast. That one, blimey.
I'm not getting involved with that either.
But I'll tell you what I do want to speak about as well is that you are. You're a very multi-talented person, aren't you? Because you not only as the consultancy work that you did about advising on characters, etc., particularly for the trans community, as an actor, you are doing great things on Hollyoaks. You're a musician. Talk to me. Actually, no. Let me step it back. You've even been on Mastermind, and I know this because
yes.
Just quickly, Mastermind, how was that? That must have been fun. What was your specialist subject?
Do you know what?
Tell the audience. I know what it is.
Okay.
Enough. I love it.
Okay, my specialist subject was Doctor Who, 1970 to 1980. Quite specific. Yeah. Well, I couldn't just say Doctor Who because it could have been anything over like 50 years. Yeah. And I thought, no, I'll stick it to the era that I know the best. But it was lovely to be invited. And, a couple of people from Hollyoaks had been on before, and I thought, that might be fun. So it was great. It was a really lovely experience, and thankfully it filmed just around the corner. Well, not around the corner, but just up the road from me. So it was a local experience as well, and it was really good. I did quite well. I got 21 points, I think, and on any other day, that would have been a winning score, because I had been watching and it was like, if I get over 20, I might win. Yeah. And I got 21 and I was sat there going, I got a few wrong, but not too bad. But I was playing alongside Martin Bell, famous BBC foreign correspondent, the man in the white suit who stood as an MP against the Tatton MPs. Oh, I can't remember their names.
We'll Google it, people.
Christine and Richard. Anyway, so the man in the white suit. So he turns up in his white suit. But of course, he's like a BBC reporter. 20 years, my elder. World travelled, incredibly intelligent. And he thrashed me. He got 24 points and he won, and that was amazing. And lovely man, though. Lovely to meet him and talk to him, because it's like he's always been a great person.
But 24 to 21, I don't have only 3 points difference though. It's not that. I still think you did really well, considering you was up against the man from Del Monte, by the sounds of it, in his suit.
Yeah, he was a good guy. But the thing was, I didn't win, but what I did do was I walked out with my head held high, because I thought the points total I was happy with, but that just didn't happen on the day. But you know what? It was great fun. It was a lot of fun. And then I don't get to do much of that kind of telly guest stuff, because the thing about being in Hollyoaks is your profile is much, much lower to the general public. So I'm very well known within the LGBT plus community, but less so in the wider world. You kind of have to watch Hollyoaks to get it. and we have a smaller viewing figure than the likes of Corrie or EastEnders or something. So that's the thing. Quite often they don't think about inviting me, and I get it. You know, I'm not an A-lister by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, you are to us, though, Annie. That's why we wanted you on here. Listen,
thank you.
Forget all them. You don't need them. You're on Pride Life Presents, love. No, you're all right.
I know. I haven't had my tea yet for this. I'm doing well.
But listen, just quickly as well. Sorry, go on. What are you going to tell me?
Yeah, no. What I was going to say is that this Christmas you'll get to see my pointless performance.
Oh right. Oh well, that's good. That's good.
So yeah, it should be around about Christmas, New Year. We filmed it earlier on, and well, I'm not going to say how I did, obviously.
It would be pointless.
That was a lot. That was a lot of fun as well. I'm a massive quizzer. To be honest, me and my pub quiz team, we were on eggheads.
Oh God, look at you! Listen. You're
did eggheads.
Saying that I don't really get to go on these shows. You've got a backlog.
I keep trying. Yeah, but of course I was just me back then. So we're talking about 2010, 2011. We got to do eggheads. Oh, wow. We didn't win, but we came very, very close. We were holding them fairly well. And I did knock out Daphne, but there you go. Not literally. Not literally.
No violence, please.
She's lovely old lady. But no, so yeah, that kind of thing. I want to do more of that, definitely. Wonderful fun.
Well, this is the thing as well, because like I say, you are multi-talented. Of course, very intelligent woman as well. What? Tell me a bit more about your music, because I know you showed me. I had the privilege before we went live, folks. Had the privilege. Oh look, we might get to sit now. Look at this fabulous room.
Yes.
Is there anything you particularly love doing performance-wise, or playing, singing? What is it?
Well, my first instrument is the drums.
Oh wow! Yes.
Hence the digital kit, the expensive digital kit here. That's my first instrument, and I learned that when I was very, very young. I've kind of taught myself some keyboards and guitar. I can play chords on the keyboards. I can play about 7 chords on the guitar, but I'm not by any stretch of the imagination skilled on those instruments, but I play with them. And more to the point, I don't do live performance at all because I'm far too nervous, but I do recordings. I write songs. I record them on my big computer system that's sitting in front of me at the moment, and that's just a big hobby. I just bring myself up here and I'll start to play some chords and have a bit of fun. And the funny thing is that the kind of music I write isn't necessarily the kind that I would listen to. Because I'm a bit of a rocker.
Selling yourself here, Annie.
I'm terrible. So I like rock music, like Queen, Bowie, and that kind of thing. But I write this kind of whimsy folk pop, which is odd, which you can hear on beresfordandwallace.com.
Oh, fabulous. Right, there we go. Nice plug there. We get it out.
Which is a very old website with a very old photo of me. And you know what? Me and my friend John, we did 2 albums together. We shared the singing and writing duties. And we did 2 albums together, and we've not done anything ever since. And that might be it. But on the other hand, I do have a load of songs kind of stored up. But I wouldn't call myself a real musician. I'd call myself a hobby musician.
Okay.
So I do it for fun. Yeah. I certainly wouldn't do it public. I might sing the songs in public, but playing instruments is a wholly different matter.
Yeah. Well,
and I'm actually working on a one-woman show, which may have that in it.
Oh, is there anything you can tell us about that, or is this all top secret at this point?
No, it's semi-autobiographical. It's going to be an hour and a half long, with an idea of taking it to Edinburgh, perhaps. But it's going to be that kind of thing, and maybe about 4 or 5 songs in it as well. We're going to wait and see. I'm currently writing it, but I've been writing it for 6 months because I keep walking away going, no, this is rubbish. This is rubbish. But and then Julie phones me and she goes, "Get on with it," and I'm like, oh. So yeah, it will happen. It will happen.
Yeah, a working masterpiece that we've got. Well,
maybe
that's exciting. That's exciting. Before we kind of round up, because again, there's so much, and I've really loved chatting with you.
I'm sorry, I'm talking.
Oh
so
no,
much.
well, listen. If you didn't, I'd be out of a job. So I love that you talked so much, Annie. I've loved listening to you, and I know that I'm excited for this to go out because you've talked us through the journey. I feel it's been we've talked about the history, the political side where we're at for the community, your career, you as an individual, your music, your music career, but also your back catalogue of TV shows that you that you're on. What does Annie Wallace do when you're not doing this? What is your kind of chillaxing kind of go-to? Maybe a G&T included, I don't know. But what does it look like?
I'm more of a cider person, to be honest.
I see.
I love a big cider connoisseur. Not of the proper stuff.
Just what you get down the offie, then, is it?
Has to be fizzy, yeah. But no, that is my typical cider. No, oh, gosh, my switching off time is basically sometimes it's music, sometimes it's films. I'm a massive film buff. I have a home cinema system in my lounge with a screen that comes down and a projector.
Oh, wow.
So it's not, by the way, for those of you listening, that's not because I'm a rich actress. I'm not a rich actress. I work on Hollyoaks.
Rich in love.
The projector and the screen cost me about £1,000, and I got it, and I had it put in just before lockdown, and it was the best thing in the world because I was able to kind of have a cinema night in my own house. Yeah. And because I'm such a film buff, it's just really nice to just switch off and no adverts, no distractions, just beautiful surround sound and everything. That's my thing. And then I suppose a bit of gaming, bit of a PS4.
Oh, a gamer. Okay, well. Gamers. See, this is what I'm talking about. This you never stop busy doing all these things. But I think
currently playing The Last of Us 2, which is fantastic. So I'm a bit of a kid at heart, really.
Yeah, but I think it's that switch off time, isn't it? And gaming is a big industry actually now, isn't it? So there's lots of people kind of doing that. What would you talk about being a big kid at heart? What would you, before we kind of come to a close, sad close, I'm going to go, what would you tell your younger self, considering your journey and where you're at now? Or, even maybe younger viewers, fans, or people who may be going through maybe similar struggles that you've been through, went through,
Well, so I left school at 18 and I went straight into working in a shop, and I waited a few years before I actually pursued transition because I had to be sure. I would tell my younger self, get on with it. Get on with it, get it done. And also, everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
There is a world of people out there who will support you and love you unconditionally. If you are LGBT+, you will find a family that will support you and will love you. And sometimes your family isn't the one you were born with. It's the one you choose for yourself. Yeah. And they will be probably better for you in the long run. I'm not saying families are bad. I'm just saying if your family doesn't agree with your life and who you are, there's loads of people out there who will love you for who you are. And for those of you with loving families, hold on to them and love them because they will be there for you till death. Yeah,
it's very true. Thank you for that. And I think that's such an important message that people will need to hear, and be watching this as well, because that is so true. Maybe your family isn't always your the family you're born into and more about your chosen family. And like you say, know that there are those people out there that will be there and will support you. And it may be a bit of a turbulent time, sometimes up and down, but you know.
Can I just say,
course.
however, my dad didn't react well. He wouldn't see me for 15 years. My mum came round within 6 months. My sister, however, Linda, hello Linda, if
Hi,
you're listening,
Linda.
has been there since day one.
Great.
Has been my support and my rock, and I love her.
Well, I love her too, because I think that's, maybe we would have a different Annie Wallace if you didn't have, you know, that support as well in your life. So thank you to sister. And thank you, Annie. Listen, thank you absolutely so much for coming on to our Pride Life Presents podcast, talking to us and just being your fabulous self. Continue. And I look forward to seeing you on the next the next TV shows, the new album that's coming out, the Christmas album. I've just thrown that in, people watching. And
I have done a couple of Christmas songs.
Well, there you go. You see, you heard it here, folks. So I look forward to whatever you do in the future, because I know it's going to be fabulous. And just listen, thank you once again, everyone. It's been amazing. It's Annie Wallace.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And people who are listening and watching to today's podcast, just to round up and say that, you know, this is part of the Pride Life Presents shows, and we are always really appreciative of anyone, whether you're part of our LGBTQ plus community or not, being part of it as allies as well. And Pride Life is always about inclusion, about being your true authentic self. So again, Annie, inspiration, amazing, and thank you so much.